We have Robert Hall here from Wilkerson Crane, so we'd like to welcome him up to the stage, and please give him a round of applause. Thanks for joining us.
Yep.
Take a seat in the
middle chair, huh?
Yeah.
Was that parent-teacher conferences this week? It feels very similar.
Yeah. It's like a Barbara Walters interview. All right, so just going to go through a couple questions, and we'll just get started. Since you were, when you did your implementation, since you were the only initial user doing setup and training, what challenges did you encounter during the initial implementation phase before the on-site training?
Yeah, so Wilkerson, we have, at the time we did implementation, we had 4 people in our office, 40 people in the field, and a lot of, what I was trying to do was not put any more burden on the other 4 people. I didn't want to add more to their workload, so I tried to put it all on my shoulders and, meet with Angie and Lisa at the time, and have those calls, have those sessions, those setup calls and everything, and then take everything that I was talking about with them and run back to the salesperson or the accounting person and kind of regurgitate what we talked about, and it absolutely did not work. From the standpoint, I should have brought them in a little earlier and had one-on-one sessions with them. So I think Shara, was it, said earlier, to build out a team and, with the SMEs, the subject matter experts in each one of the verticals within your company, and bring them to the table and let them own a piece of it, right? And allow those people to have a hand in implementing the software, because they're the ones that live in it day to day. And I was really just kind of taking what we had talked about and then saying, okay, I need all this information. And, smart people have questions when you ask them obscure questions. They want to know, well, what does this mean? And what do you mean you want to know what our allocated cost per hour is? I've never heard that term before. I know what it costs to own that piece of equipment, but so bringing those subject matter experts in, we should have done that a little earlier than we did, but yeah.
What challenges did your organization encounter adopting the software in general, whether it was NexGen and Atom, and then how did you overcome those challenges?
So, at first when we were pitching the idea, we looked at 3 or 4 different softwares, and some of them did 80% of what we wanted. Fleet Cost and Care was the one that had 180% of what we needed, right? And something that we could grow into, and that was important for us when we were shopping for a software to say, not only can it do what we're doing today, but can we grow with it? Will it grow with us? There was a very high acceptance period at first because we were all on paper, spreadsheets. The manila folders, everything was paper time cards, paper tickets, paper work orders. On Monday morning, we'd all come in to the stack of papers from the yard, and we'd sort out time, tickets, fuel receipts, and we'd do it for 3 or 4 hours. We had weekly payroll, and being able to account for all those pieces of paper took a large amount of people's time that could have been doing other things. So as we've grown in the last year, because we went live with NexGen November 1st of last year, so it's almost been a full year. Our business has been able to scale. We've doubled in size from revenue, equipment, and people. And we haven't had to add a huge back office to support those things. So some of our competitors in the Midwest and in Kansas City, you hear they have 20 people in their back office, and their people and their unit counts the same as ours. So we've been able to mitigate a lot of cost with our growth because of Fleet Cost and Care.
So you mentioned you went live November 1st. In terms of the time before you adopted NexGen and Atom, what are some of the key metrics that you've been able to learn from that you didn't have before you adopted the software?
Labor classifications. We're a union shop, so we knew what the pay rate was. We knew that this person was getting, Group 1 or Group 3 oiler pay, but what task did they actually do, right? So what was the task? Just because somebody gets paid this pay rate doesn't mean that's the actual task that they were doing. So one of the key metrics, the first one we were able to grab was, we know what job you were on, we know what unit you were doing, or you were working with, but what was the task, right? And being able to break out, the trucking task versus the rigging task and the operating task, and all those out, we really actually cut down on a lot of the sitting around at the end of the job filling out my time card task, because that's not an option. And if you make the classification required for them to put in for their ticket or their My Labor entry, you cut out a lot of that. I don't know what to classify this as. Well, what were you doing? Nothing? Well, then I guess you don't get paid for that. So it really helped. That was one of the key metrics we looked at. The other one from a sales standpoint was keeping track of who we were quoting and where we were at in the quoting process. So, we have a couple salespeople in. Anybody in sales here? Does anybody do a sales role? Anybody? Everybody's in sales, right? Everybody's an advocate for the company. But we had sales reps that had quotes on a napkin. And if you've ever done the invoice, if you guys have done the invoice, and the salesperson brings in and says, "Well, here's the quote," right? And you're like, I don't really know how to do that. But from a tracking standpoint, we know how many quotes we're putting out every month. We know how many are being converted to jobs. We're able to look at the loss codes and figure out why. Was it price? Was it did our customer not win the job? That was a large piece that we didn't know. And from a sales perspective, it's helping our salesmen be better salespeople, because now they can ask the questions of, why didn't I get this job? Was it because you didn't get the job? Was it because my price was too high? And then we're just now at the point where we can start making some actionable decisions based on that information and those metrics.
So from a leadership standpoint, based off those metrics, what kind of, have you been able to make better decisions based off those metrics? Do you have any examples of those?
Like I said, up until about 3 months ago, when everything was in a spreadsheet and on a piece of paper, it was really easy to track, where did this number come from, right? On a report or a calculation within NexGen. Unless you are, you're in SQL and you're looking through the SQL database to see where did this calculation come up with, it's really hard to trust what you can't see, right? So our first 6 or 7 months was really trying to figure out what goes in this data set, what number should we put in that data set, and consistency was one of the things we weren't consistent in how we were putting the information in. It was a lot of trial and error, but David could be trying one thing and I'm trying something different. The report is not consistent with how we're putting it in. But from the, some of the main things that we've been able to look at is when to hire. Believe it or not, when we start to see patterns in the number of quotes going up, being a union shop, we can run over and we can, grab 3 or 4 more oilers, or, hire a couple more, because from an administrative standpoint, I know that these salespeople have quoted these jobs. They've been awarded, so that we can get ahead of hiring people and getting them in the door, getting them trained, versus getting the phone call of, I had a new person start today. They're working on this job, and it's like, I don't even have an I-9 on them. I'm like, who are these people? So I don't know if it's just me or you guys all have those types of situations, but a lot of times our business moves a lot faster than what the office can handle. But NexGen has allowed us to kind of establish some standard operating procedures to say, no, before this can happen, this has to happen. So hiring is probably one that we've been able to get ahead on and make some good decisions on.
Great. Well, that's, I think, all the questions we have.
Okay.
So thank you for your time.
Okay.
And,
Thank you.
Hope you found it helpful.
Thank you.